The lost art of the British family meal. The British family meal once stood as the cornerstone of daily life, a sacred moment where generations gathered around the table to share not only food, but conversation, values, and laughter. From the steaming Sunday roast to fish and chips on a Friday, meals in Britain were about connection as much as nourishment. Today, however, the tradition feels increasingly fragile. With busy lifestyles, convenience food, and screens competing for attention, the once-cherished British family meal risks fading into memory. This explores how, why, and what we've lost. 1. The heartbeat of the British home. The dining table was more than just a place to eat. It was the stage on which the story of family life unfolded. Whether in a polished dining room in suburbia or a cozy terraced kitchen in the north, the British family meal structured the day. Breakfast might have been hurried, but supper drew everyone together. Meals were a time when parents inquired about school, children relayed playground dramas, and grandparents slipped in pearls of wisdom. This daily rhythm created not only shared experiences, but also family identity. By the 1950s, post-war Britain placed great emphasis on structure and manners at mealtimes. Children were taught to wait until everyone was seated before eating, to ask politely for food to be passed, and to finish what was on their plate. These small rituals forged habits of patience, respect, and gratitude. In many homes, mealtime prayer or grace added a spiritual layer to the gathering. Today, such traditions are far less common, as meals often happen piecemeal, sometimes alone, or even standing at the kitchen counter. 2. Sunday roasts, Britain's culinary crown jewel. Ask any Brit to name the ultimate family dining tradition in the UK, and the Sunday roast will likely top the list. This weekly ritual dates back centuries, but truly flourished in the 19th and 20th centuries when families could afford meat more regularly. By the 1950s, the Sunday roast was near universal. Roast beef or lamb, crispy potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, seasonal veg, and rich gravy. The Sunday roast was less about extravagance and more about togetherness. Families would gather after church or a morning walk, the smell of roasting meat filling the house. The meal stretched over hours, with second helpings, desserts like apple crumble or treacle sponge, and tea to round it off. For many, it was the highlight of the week, symbol of stability in an uncertain post-war world. We still love a roast, but it's not weekly for everyone. A recent poll found only 25% of adults had one the previous Sunday. While the roast remains a cultural icon of British traditions, it is increasingly occasional rather than ritual. 3. Everyday suppers, shepherd's pie to toad in the hole. Outside of Sundays, everyday meals carried their own rhythm. Classic British family meals included shepherd's pie, fish pie, toad in the hole, sausage and mash, and bubbling stews. These were economical dishes, stretching limited ingredients to feed big families. Rationing didn't fully end until the 4th of July, 1954, when meat and the last remaining foods were finally derationed. Thrift was therefore still central to cooking. By the 1960s and 70s, many working-class homes relied on filling staples like bubble and squeak or corned beef hash, while middle-class families experimented with casseroles and international flavors. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, dishes like spaghetti bolognese had become standard dinner party fare, signaling Britain's growing taste for the exotic. Still, the dining table remained a place where families sat together to share these simple, hearty meals. Fast forward to today, and many of these classics are less common. Ready meals, takeaways, and fast food often replace home-cooked suppers. While convenient, they lack the communal act of peeling potatoes, stirring gravy, or waiting for a pie to bake. Rituals that once bonded families. 4. Fish and chips, a Friday night treat. Few things capture the warmth of family dining in the UK like Friday night fish and chips. The custom of choosing fish on Fridays comes from abstaining from meat on Fridays in Christian tradition. Fish became the popular substitute, which helped cement that Friday chippy tea vibe. By the mid-20th century, queues outside the local chippy were a familiar sight, with families eager for their weekly treat. Fish and chips were inexpensive, filling, and best eaten together, often straight from the paper wrapping at the family table. Children fought over the crispiest chip, while parents shared stories from the working week. The shared meal wasn't elaborate but held deep cultural meaning. It was routine, communal, and comfortingly predictable. Though fish and chips remain iconic, today they are more often consumed as a takeaway, eaten in front of the television rather than a sit-down family meal. The shift highlights how traditions survive in form but lose their communal spirit. 5. Mum's Kitchen, the keeper of recipes and rituals. In mid-20th century Britain, mothers were often the custodians of the British family meal. They carried the weight of cooking, shopping, and meal planning, often guided by recipes inherited from their own mothers. The kitchen was their domain, and their skill determined much of the family's food culture. Dishes like stews, puddings, scones, and Sunday cakes weren't merely food, but memory makers. The smell of a Victoria sponge cooling on the counter, or a bubbling rice pudding in the oven, could transport children instantly into a world of warmth and security. These meals represented care and continuity, passing family traditions from one generation to the next. While modern Britain rightly celebrates shared cooking roles, convenience foods, and global cuisines, something has been lost. With fewer people baking from scratch or simmering stews for hours, the kitchen has become less a place of ritual and more a stopover between work, school, and leisure. 6. The television and the rise of the TV dinner. The arrival of the television in the 1950s changed the very dynamics of the British family meal. The 1953 coronation helped turbocharge adoption. TV ownership jumped from about 1 in 7 households, 1952, to 1 in 3, 1954. At first, families gathered around one small screen together, sometimes eating from trays while watching early programming. By the 1970s and 80s, however, ready meals took off here in the 1970s, and the 1980s microwave boom made solo, staggered mealtimes much easier. Instead of conversation, families shared silence, absorbed by the TV. Advertisements even glamorized the convenience of TV dinners, presenting them as modern and liberating, though in truth, they fragmented the tradition of shared mealtimes. Today, screens still compete with the family table. Smartphones and streaming services mean that even when families sit together, attention is divided. Around 80% of UK households now own a microwave, underscoring how deeply convenience reshaped family dining in the UK. 7. Class, region, and identity through food. Family meals also reflected class and region. Working-class families often built meals around inexpensive staples: bread, potatoes, cabbage, and cheaper cuts of meat. Middle-class families enjoyed more variety and often emphasized formality at the table. In wealthier homes, meals were multi-course affairs, complete with proper table settings and etiquette. Regional food also played a huge role. In Cornwall, families ate pasties together. In Wales, bowls of caul were shared. In Scotland, haggis and clapshot featured on celebratory tables. Northern families leaned on pies and puddings, while southern households often had lighter dishes. These regional flavors weren't just about food, but about identity, linking families to place and tradition. As Britain became more multicultural from the 1960s onward, new flavors entered the British family meal, from curries to pasta to stir-fries. This enriched the dining landscape but also diluted the old regional rituals that once marked family life. 8. The vanishing ritual and its revival. In 2025, a UK survey of 2,000 families found about one-third eat together daily, while many meals happen on the sofa with screens on. Brits are now as likely to eat dinner on the sofa as at a table, and most watch video while eating. The lost art of the British family meal is not simply about food disappearing, it's about the erosion of ritual, routine, and conversation. Yet signs of revival exist. During lockdown, half of UK adults cooked more at home, and a third spent more time eating with people they live with. Cooking shows, the slow food movement, and renewed interest in heritage recipes have also encouraged families to reconnect at the table. Studies link more frequent shared meals with better diet quality and other positive outcomes for kids. It's correlation, not a magic cure. People who share more meals with others also report higher life satisfaction. These findings suggest that reclaiming the family meal isn't just nostalgic. It has measurable benefits for well-being. If revived, the family meal could once again become a source of strength, grounding families in shared time rather than fragmented schedules. It may never return to its post-war dominance, but its value remains timeless. The lost art of the British family meal is about more than dishes or recipes. It's about togetherness. From roasts to fish and chips, meals once anchored family life in Britain. Though the ritual has faded, its revival offers hope that food can once again connect hearts as much as stomachs. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.